Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Crystal Domain. Not too long ago, I'm a little behind on this, on the hype train, but it's fine. Recently, we had Battles of Legend, Terminal Revenge come out. We talked a little bit in my last video about 2 weeks ago, when the set came out, about Dragon Master Magia. And, you know, prices on it have not gone down, so time to proxy up or get some OCG copies. But what we're going to talk about today is actually the cards that I find the most interesting from the set. There are about 15, one of them a bit of a caveat on it because I don't think it actually works in Domain. So we're going to talk about 16 cards today, but more like 15 that I find like they will find some use or are interesting to me for Domain format. So, with that said, we're going to move right over to this short list of cards. We're going to start with monsters from the main deck, talk about a couple traps, talk about a couple spells, and then we're going to end with some extra deck monsters. And we're going to go from there. So, starting us off, as a caveat, if some of these are reprints and I just haven't heard of them, oopsie. But as far as I could see, when looking into these cards, it wasn't telling me any of these were reprints. So I'm assuming these are all new original cards from the set. If not, I hadn't heard of them, and I want to talk about them anyways. So, with that being said, 16 cards from Battles of Legend, Terminal Revenge, that I find interesting for Domain format. Starting us off is Electr Blaster. This is a level 4 fire machine monster with 1800 attack and 1400 defense. If you normal or special summon a fire monster, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then you can send one level 8 Pyro monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Electr Blaster once per turn. Once per turn, if a spell card is activated except during the damage step, you can make all fire monsters you currently control gain 300 attack. A little bit of an interesting caveat with this card is now level 8 Pyro specific. However, I feel like there are some uses for this. Usually it is very powerful to be able to send a type of card from deck to the graveyard to trigger something in your deck. Not to mention that this is fire support, and fire has been getting better over time. I don't know, would this benefit Flame Burge? Is Flame Burge level 8? I think Flame Burge for Snake Eyes is a level 8, so that's a target, I guess, if you felt like it. Mainly, just this card's interesting to me also because it gives just an anthem of like 300 attack buff to all your fire monsters, which might not matter all the time, but in Domain, the combat step, the battle phase, it does matter quite a bit. And so that ability to raise your attack might affect your opponents and where they target, especially if they were looking for more value in what they're removing from the table. And this makes your board a little harder to hit through, a little bit less damage coming through even if they blow up your stuff, things like that. I just found this card interesting. I wouldn't say it's broken, it just kind of caught my eye. Now, this is the one that's a caveat of really we're talking about 15 cards and not really 16. Mir Match. This is a level 1 fire spellcaster monster with 0 attack and 0 defense. If this card is in your hand, you can reveal 3 cards with different names from your hand and or deck that match the names of 3 different cards in your opponent's graveyard, and if you do, you special summon this card. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can send this card summoned by its previous effect to the graveyard, and then send one card with the same name as that opponent's card from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. And if you do, negate the activation. So this is like a very long-winded negation effect. In theory, I believe this card works for Domain, with the caveat that the opponent sitting across from you, one of them, at least at your table, is running the same cards as you. Now, the part that I thought about with this card is the fact that staples are so common in everybody's deck lists. that at a table of 4 people, this card does have a chance to come up, but I don't know if it works. If it does, neat. Very specific in how it works. It caught my eye because of how, like, specific it wants to be with how it triggers. But I did find it interesting because we are in a format where a lot of the same powerful traps and spells and some powerful monsters are repetitive amongst people's decks. So as a result, this card might be able to trigger. I'm not too sure, but it caught my eye. Next, we have Red Lotus King, Flame Crime, a level 3 Fire Fiend monster with 1700 attack and 300 defense. During the main phase, if you control a Fiend Tuner, or your opponent controls a special summon monster, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Pretty sure this means that this could be summoned on the opponent's turn, which is neat. You can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned, you can inflict 400 damage to your opponent for each fire monster you control with different names. Very useful for our format where everything's a one-of. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can send one normal trap from your deck to the graveyard. Now, I don't know the full extent of how good that is, but I can imagine there is use for milling out specific types of cards, as I said earlier, with the Electr Blaster. This card can shill out a normal trap from deck to the graveyard, and you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. It can be summoned on the opponent's turn, and this just seems good. The Fiend is good. Revolving around Fiends is powerful right now because of Fiendsmith. Fire is a good attribute currently. Being able to burn the opponent for some damage is useful. The funniest thing is if this card's recurable in any way, that burn damage can happen more than once. Granted, in an advanced format, it could happen several times because you could run this at 3. But still, if there was a way to kind of reuse or abuse this effect, it'd be decent. Other than the once per turn, of course. But kind of interesting. Perhaps it will find a use in Fire or Fiend piles. Shining Star Dragon. This is a level 4 light dragon tuner monster with 0 attack and defense. During your opponent's main phase, if this card is in your hand, quick effect, you can target a dragon synchro monster in your graveyard. Special summon this card, and if you do, special summon the targeted monster, but its effects are negated. This alone is wild. It brings itself out, and it reanimates a dragon synchro from the grave, but its effects are negated. Either way, it brings a body with it just by summoning itself, which is very good. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can synchro summon a dragon synchro monster using this card you control. You can only use the effect of Shining Star Dragon once per turn. A dragon synchro monster that was summoned using this card as material cannot be destroyed by battle. So it brings itself back, and it brings the dragon synchro back, and immediately synchro summons into something else, which will not have its effects negated, on top of adding an additional effect that it cannot be destroyed by battle, giving it some form of protection, even further than whatever you're summoning could also have protection. Point being, this card I think is going to be very useful in Dragon piles, and will probably find a home in a deck that wants to Synchro Climb. I could see this being extremely useful with, like, Stardust climbing, with, like, maybe, like, a, what's that deck called? Like, the FTK, with, like, Stardust and, like, Quantum, I think is what it's called, or whatever it is. But, point being, Synchro Climbing, Dragon pile decks, this card's very good. This next one's more for, I think this card will get attempted to be used in our format, which is Legendary Exodia Incarnate. Cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your hand by tributing a Forbidden 1 monster. It cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card gains 1000 attack for each Forbidden 1 monster in your graveyard, unaffected by other card effects. Once per turn during your end phase, you can add a Forbidden 1 monster from graveyard to your hand. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can reveal any number of Forbidden 1 monsters in your hand, and if you do, you draw one for each. So, the problem with this card is it's not the easiest to summon, but I feel like there will be an attempt to make this card work in our format because it is Exodia. We are, you know, a lot of us are some form of Yugi Boomer, one way or another. And I do feel like this card is going to C, attempted use. I forgot to mention it, but at the beginning, it is a level 10 dark spellcaster with 0 attack and defense at the start, and then it gets attack based on Forbidden 1 monsters in Grave. The bottom ability does seem kind of powerful if you are, you know, attempting to do an Exodia like win. Being able to draw a number of cards does seem powerful. Getting this card out is going to be the problem. I don't know too much about, you know, current Exodia strategies or how many ways there are to get this card out, but other than that, I feel like it's going to see use or attempted use because it's Exodia. This next one's just a weird one. I don't know if this is new or not, but it's a normal trap. Bunch of beast bodies. It's, to me, I don't recognize it, and it felt kind of interesting. So it changes all monsters that were not normal or special summon this turn to defense position. So, you know, prior to this turn, you know, everything gets tapped. For the rest of this turn, a player who controls the defense position monster cannot declare attacks with monsters that were normal or special this turn. Very powerful, all-consuming for, like, all monsters. But then the caveat being that whoever you are using this on for that turn, that player will not be able to swing with their new monsters because their old monsters have been tapped or turn into defense position. I find this interesting. I don't know how good this is, but it reads well for Domain because of how many people it affects. And politically, this does, you could be at a table where there is only one player that's a problem. You use it to that opponent to show the rest of the other players that you are interested in dealing with this player and making them not able to attack anybody, not just you. So this is a good card, I think, for this format, for how it works. Then we have Synchro Panic, a continuous trap card. Activate only if a face-up Synchro monster you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect by targeting one of them. You special summon a tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters from your graveyard whose total levels equal the targeted monsters, and if you do, they cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects this turn. This does kind of like, the way it initially reads is your big Synchro monster gets destroyed, you get to reanimate the pieces that made it, and then they cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. And then neither player can Synchro Summon, which is a caveat. However, destroy this card during your standby phase after activation. It has its use to get you back in the game, but with a little bit of the caveat of you can't Synchro Summon after for that period of time. But neither player, which I believe would be changed to all players in Domain. So all 4 people at your table would not be able to special summon, I believe. Unless, because of the way it's worded, it would be you and the opponent that messed with your monster. Then that would be how it would be read. Looking at it, though, this does get your stuff back, and then it's hard for them to be removed, which does give you some time to sit on them in defense position and hope for a little bit of recouping, which is interesting and could be used in this format. Excuse me. Now, the big one. This card, I feel like, is a new staple for the format and is probably the best card for this format on this list. Evon's Son. This is a continuous spell card. If a face-up monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can gain life points equal to their combined original attack. If a monster is special summoned face-up from your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can target one of them and it gains 1000 attack. Then if a spell or trap is discarded from your hand to the graveyard except during the damage step, you can target one of them and add it back to your hand. You can only use each effective Evon's Son once per turn. If you're dealing with any kind of discard effects, with spell and traps being the target, you get them back. You're reanimating monsters, they can become stronger. If your stuff gets destroyed, you're gaining life points. This card keeps you alive, benefits your recurred monsters, which you might be wanting to do in your strategy, and if you are getting hit with discard effects, you get those cards back as long as they are spell or traps, being discarded from your hand to the graveyard. Each of these effects can only trigger once per turn, but all 3 of them could trigger technically. And once per turn means that you can use these every turn. Or, more specifically, the top ability is relevant because let's say one player blows up one of your guys. Okay, cool, I'll gain life points. Player 2 also comes at you, blows up one of your guys. Neat, I'll gain more life points. Each turn being all 4 players. So this card can trigger multiple times in a rotation before it comes back to you. I do feel like this card is going to be a staple. Like, I hyped up Multi-Universe from the last set that we covered, and I think this card is in a similar vein of just good for the format, and you need to be looking at it if you can benefit from these effects, or if you can abuse these effects. So the biggest thing is it talks about by battle or card effect. In my case, I will want to be running Ebon Sun in my Crystal Beast deck because I actively seek to destroy Crystal Beast with Rainbow Bridge of the Heart. And if I do that, I can gain attack equal to their original attack. So, like, you know, I blow up Amethyst Cat, I'll gain 1,200 life points. I blow up Topaz Tiger, I gain 1,600 life points. These effects are every turn with Rainbow Bridge of the Heart. Every turn I can be using that to tutor more cards out of my deck. With Ebon Sun on board, this is a very powerful combo that leads to more life points and preserves me in the game. Now, in terms of reanimating monsters, I don't do that too much, but I can kind of do it. And if so, the 1,000 attack could be kind of relevant for me. But I think of other decks, like zombie decks, are going to like this card quite a bit. And I think stuff like that are going to really enjoy this deck. And then the Spell and Trap discarding is also good. I could see that being very powerful. So, with that being said, long-winded segment on Ebon Sun. Love this card. Staple for the format. This next one's weird. Life Hack. It's a quick play spell card. You target one face-up monster on the field. Any damage your opponent takes this turn is halved. Also, that monster's attack becomes equal to your opponent's current life points until the end of this turn. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one face-up monster on the field. Any damage your opponent takes this turn is halved. Also, that monster's attack becomes equal to your current life points at the end of this turn. You can only use each effective life hack once per turn. So based on the opponent for the first half, and then based on me for the second half. This could lead to a big old beat stick for the opponent, and while they take half damage, you could be benefiting from their attack targets by, you know, giving their monster a big enough, you know, attack stat to beat over something that you couldn't deal with, but they're trying to deal with it. Political, of course, you could be like, hey, I have the ability to help you get rid of this monster, just swing at them and I can do this. And then it's like, okay, cool, that's a way to handle it. The second half is good to protect you or other people at the table because you make it based on your life points. If you're low, you can make a very annoying monster very weak with this card, which is also nice. So I think this card, not like a mainstay, but a number of these cards I felt like have had a political angle to them, which is something that can be considered for a 4-player format that in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! Not that good, but in 4-player Yu-Gi-Oh! Like in Domain format, it does get better with that angle being acknowledged with some of these cards. Next is Oil, a normal spell card. Target up to 2 level 4 or lower fire monsters with different names in your graveyard. Add them to your hand. You can only activate it once per turn. It's fire support. It's very powerful. This is good for fire decks. It doesn't matter if it's Snake Eyes, Volcanic, Fire Kings, Fiendsmith. I think they're fire. They're probably light. Whatever. Point being, fire decks, if you're running fire in some capacity, this card is generally for you. It brings them back. Very powerful effect. Moving on. Sacrifice Level Up, a normal spell card. Target one Xyz monster you control, banish 2 materials from it, and if you do, you special summon one Xyz monster from your extra deck, whose rank is 1 higher than that monster, but it cannot attack this turn. You can only activate this once per turn. I think this card's neat. You just get another guy. You know, you might not have the ability to get the other guy out. This could lead to some very interesting plays, I feel like. I don't really personally run an Xyz climbing deck, but I feel like this card has use in Xyz climbing decks, and so I wanted to bring it up. Then lastly, we have Synchro Creed for main deck cards. This is a normal spell card. If a Synchro monster is on the field, draw 1 card. Then if there are 3 or more Synchro monsters on the field, you could draw 1 more card. You can only activate this once per turn. While we are in a format where Pot of Greed exists, Graceful Charity exists, draw effects are more powerful, we need to acknowledge that cards like this are still good, because you could be playing a Synchro pile, and someone else at the table could be playing Synchro, and therefore this card is going to get value from you or anybody else playing Synchro monsters. You play it. There is no negative here, so if you are in a game where there are 3 or more Synchro monsters on the field, you're drawing 2 cards. This is Pot of Greed, but Synchro-oriented, which is another slot to draw cards in a deck that is Synchro-based, which is very powerful. So, with that being said, a card to consider if you are in a Synchro deck and can make this card go at full power, or if you are frequently playing in pods where there are more than 1 people, you and somebody else maybe, are playing Synchro monsters, this card benefits from, you know, the larger player pool being 4 people at a table, being able to make this card be at full strength. So, something to consider. Lastly, we're going to talk about some extra deck monsters. With Ace Spades Speculation, this is a Warrior Fusion, level 7 with 2500 attack and 2500 defense. In order to be summoned, it requires a monster with 2500 or more attack, and a face-down defense position monster with 25 or 100 less defense. You can only special summon Ace Spade Speculation once per turn. You can tribute 1 attack position monster and 1 face-down defense position monster to special summon this card from your graveyard. This card gains the following effect based on its battle position. In attack, it gains attack equal to the highest original attack among monsters your opponent controls, your choice of tied. Defense position cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. So, you can make a wall, or you can make a really big guy. While I don't think this card is broken, and it is very specific in how it's summoned, I bring up this card because it's the way it comes about is interesting to me. And also, I feel like it invites a challenge on someone summoning this card. And people like a challenge in this format for you know, quirky and interesting deck building. So I think a card like this is very interesting and would catch the attention of some of our deck builders in our format. Next, we have the obvious, arguably the best card in the set, Phantom of Yubel. This is a level 9 Dark Fiend Fusion monster, 0 attack, 0 defense. It requires a Yubel monster and a Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense. It must be special summoned from your extra deck by shuffling the above cards from your hand, field, and or graveyard into the deck of your extra deck, so it is contact fusioned. It cannot be used as fusion material. It cannot be destroyed by battle. You take no damage from battles involving this card. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you contribute this card. The activated effect becomes your opponent destroys 1 Yubel monster in their hand, deck, or field. You can only use this effect of Phantom of Yubel once per turn. So, this just turns off their card. Or it makes it extremely beneficial to you. This card's very powerful. It's very expensive, $55. Not as much as our, you know, coveted Dragon Master Magia, but, you know, very powerful card. This is, obviously, I'm interested in it as someone that plays a Yubel Crystal Beast variant deck. I do want this card for my deck, but I do think this card will have a home in Fiend in general. Fiend as a domain pile has gotten very powerful with Fiendsmith and Yubel support over the last, year. So I think that cards like this are adding on to that power. So generically, Fiend gets another powerful utility card in Phantom of Yubel. This next one's weird. Really weird. So this is Wonky Quartet, a level 4 Earth Xyz monster with 0 attack and 2600 defense. It's also a beast. It requires 2+ level 4 monsters to be summoned. It is unaffected by other card effects. Plain and simple. If this card is Exceed summoned, also once per turn during your standby phase, attach the top 3 cards of your deck to this card as material. Then apply the following effects based on the number of monsters attached to this card. 4 or less, give control of this card to your opponent. 5 or more, take 400 damage for each material this card has. And if you do, destroy all monsters you control. This is a card that is asking to be done stupid crap with in this format. There are 4 players, someone at the table will have a jank pile deck of some weird stuff, and this card fits into shenanigans in a multiplayer game where this gets bounced around and does stupid things and blows up people's boards. And, you know, it goes off at somebody at some point, or it just keeps being tossed around if they could find a way to get rid of the materials. Like, just, this card is very silly, and I don't know if it's good, but it's funny, and I can imagine somebody would want to do something stupid with this. And lastly, our $650 Dragon Master Magia. This is a level 12 light dragon fusion monster with 5,000 attack and 4,000 defense. It must be summoned with a Blue Eyes Ultimate or 3 Blue Eyes monsters, or including a Chaos monster or a Blackluster Soldier ritual monster. It must be fusion summoned. Okay. When your opponent activates a card effect, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Pretty good. You can only use this effect of DMM in response to each card type. Monster, spell, or trap once per turn. So it has 3 built-in negates for a monster, a spell, and a trap. This alone is very powerful because it's like a Borreload Savage with 3 counters. So you're going to run out, but the thing is, it's not based on counters for this card. So each turn, it will reset the monster, spell, trap number it can negate. Meaning this card is very powerful as long as it stays on board and can affect everybody at the table. If this face-up card and its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon a Blue Eyes monster, or a Chaos, or a BLS, Blackluster Soldier ritual monster, from your extra deck or graveyard. So it floats into something else. I do think this card is very good for the Blue Eyes, you know, Blue Eyes, Chaos, BLS, Yugi Boomer pile, right? Like, shout out to Jesse. I think this card's going to be a house in your deck. But also the price tag's too much. But also the card's really good. So proxying it or getting an OCG copy and just having a lot of fun with this card, this is a very good monster to like do something with in your Blue Eyes deck that normally doesn't have the best end board, but this card is a good end board piece. So with that being said, that will be everything today with our 16 interesting cards that I think will be worth talking about in the domain format from the set Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge. Next video that I will be doing will be actually doing something similar, but for the upcoming Infinite Forbidden deck, or set, sorry. Yeah, so we're going to talk about Infinite Forbidden next. I'm excited to cover that set. There's many good cards in there. And, of course, thank you all for watching. If you would like to support this channel, you can leave a like and comment down below your thoughts on the cards. If I got any of them wrong, if they don't work, like I said, oopsie. Or if you're excited for some of these cards, talk about it down below. And also, if you have anything you'd like to see on the channel, you can recommend that down below in the comments as well. You can join our Discord. We recently hit like 1,500 people, I think, plus in the domain Discord. There'll be a link for that in the description as well. You can join in our format, have fun with us, build decks, talk about the format, goof off like I do most of the time in the Discord. And, you know, just in general, your patience and viewership is what truly matters. You don't need to comment or like. The support of you viewing alone is enough. And, of course, if you want to take the extra step, you can subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that you are notified of all upcoming videos, and that way you beat the algorithm. That will not really be helpful to helping out a channel because it won't recommend videos most of the time that you want. So, with all that being said, thank you for watching, and of course, I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good day. Bye-bye.